the rest of the story. And this is from the diary of a lonely man, and I quote, "Weekdays, though they brought me many disappointments, had one advantage. Business kept me from thinking about myself. Sundays and holidays were my days of sorrow. I could go to the downtown churches Sunday mornings, but during the long Sunday afternoons I was desperately lonely. Oh, for the voice of a kindly old friend. Strolls through city parks were far from satisfying. There's no place like a city park on a Sunday afternoon to feel one's loneliness. The very presence of so many strangers accentuated it more than boundless expanses of land and water could have done. Some Sundays I went farther and farther out into the country, but even there tranquility was lacking. All-day excursions across Lake Michigan by boat gave me temporary relief, but afforded no escape from the crowds. In fact, the boats were always loaded to their capacity with men, women, children. Everywhere there were people, but nowhere a familiar face. To me, one essential was lacking: the presence of friends. Paul, you see, was a young lawyer, alone and lonely in the big city, Chicago, and the words I have just recited were his. But he endured the loneliness. He walked alone, as he put it, for a number of years. Changing residences did no good. He did that 30 times. At last he could bear the misery no longer, and one chill February day he invited 3 young businessmen to lunch at Madame Golly's restaurant on Wells Street. Their names were Sylvester and Gus and Hiram, and each, like Paul, had come to Chicago from a small town. Throughout lunch they reminisced about boyhood days, about the special feeling each got from just knowing that there were friends close by. As Sylvester and Gus and Hiram wandered back into memories of their own, Paul watched their faces fill with quiet longing. Why not, he thought, first to himself and then aloud, why not establish a private club, starting with the 4 of them? They would meet simply for the sake of informal friendship, and they would never be lonely again. All eagerly agreed. A meeting was appointed for 2 weeks later, and the club was officially organized. 2 members were added, Harry and Charlie. Sylvester was made the club's first president, and thereafter each week the men dined together at noon. Paul describes their happiness this way: "We grew in numbers, in fellowship, in the spirit of helpfulness to each other and to our city. The banker and the baker, the parson and the plumber, the lawyer and the laundryman discovered the similarity in each other's ambitions and problems, successes and failures. We learned how much we had in common. We learned joy in being of service to each other. Again, I seemed to be back in my New England valley." The young lawyer who spent his first years in Chicago desperately lonely, longing for a familiar face, was Paul Harris, and the club he founded February 23, 1905, 100 years ago this day, brought fellowship into his life and into the lives of others. And that club has now expanded to 166 countries. Rotary. And now you know the rest of the story.